Today, we woke up to devastating news that Durban has been flooded once again. A severe storm is said to have broken out Saturday night that resulted in houses and roads being flooded, landslides and cars washed away. Now, areas that were affected included Stanger, Verulam, Tongaat, Phoenix, Umhlanga, Umdloti and some parts of Durban South as well. And this morning, joining us to unpack all of this and to try and make sense and understand what might have caused this is meteorologist Annette Botha. Annette, welcome to Expresso. Lekker om vir jou te hê.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I love what you do. I've got a big fascination. We've just been speaking about it off air just now. But quickly unpack, before we get into the Durban floods, what exactly is the work of a meteorologist?
So usually when I tell someone I'm a meteorologist, they're like, meteors? Do you look at the stars?
Not an astronomer.
Or, no, I'm like, no. And then the second reaction is, oh, you're the one that lies for a living. So those are the two reactions I get. And
Lovely.
then I tell them, no, I'm actually a scientist. And what we do is actually interpret the weather. So meteorologists, basically, we we do observations, which is basically looking at what happened, satellite radar, and, weather balloons and all of that. And then we will interpret that, which is looking at the supercomputers and looking at what the forecast is, what is it showing, how is it going to play out, and then obviously then we'll have and do our inputs and our professional inputs, and then we'll forecast the weather for the few days ahead. So that's what a meteorologist does.
Learning how to read the isobars.
Exactly, and more.
And more, exactly. Let's talk about the Durban floods. It was devastating. We saw clips on social media, everything circulating. It was really devastating. What do you think, in your professional opinion, was the cause of these floods?
Yeah, so KZN has gone through a lot, especially the past few years. If we look back at the 2022 flooding, that was a completely different weather system that caused the flooding compared to actually, you said earlier,
recently.
On Sunday. So if you look at the flood now, that was caused by what we say is an upper level trough, which is an area of low pressure system, which basically just transports lots of moisture from the tropics to South Africa. And that worked together with reaching high, which is basically just a high pressure system which is feeding that low with warm, moist air from the Indian Ocean. So those two working together is just like KZN is just prone for heavy rainfall and especially flash flooding. So, and especially what happened on Sunday, it was continuous rainfall and heavy rainfall that led to the flooding in that area. And there's a few other, things that lead to the flooding over there. It's a very slopey area, so they are prone to mudslides. Urbanization plays a role. People living in flood-prone areas. And then also just, the area itself is, because it's so vulnerable, the ground is so saturated, and that's where water just flows off, and that leads to the flash flooding into the area.
But it seems like it's getting more intense. I mean, these weather systems, especially on the Durban side, is really getting more intense because it keeps happening. And we've seen, like I've mentioned, those clips, and especially it was heartbreaking seeing some of the children trying to get to school, wanting to cross some of these flooded areas. I mean, there were different kinds of floods as well that we get. You get the fluvial, the river, the pluvial, the flash floods, and then, of course, the coastal floods is often, which is the storm surge. How do you think this impacted, I think, their kind of experience, and what are the dangers associated with trying to cross something like that, a flood like that?
And that's the thing. People don't really always know actually how dangerous flash flooding is. Just to give an example, 15 centimeters of water can sweep you off your feet. And that's not a lot of water, flowing water. So like 30 centimeters of water can actually float a car. And then 45 centimeters of water can sweep a SUV away. So people look at a little flooded area, or maybe a flooded bridge or low-lying area, and they're like, okay, I can cross that. It doesn't look too bad. I'm a decently enough swimmer, and then they take risks. So I think the thing that's the most dangerous is actually people that are not informed. They're not informed about the risks of flood and which areas are prone to flood and which communities are prone to flood. So I think when it comes to flooding, I think education is a very important thing, is to educate those types of areas. And if they know, especially the rural areas are prone to floods, then please, just rather safe than sorry. Please don't go to school, stay at home, maybe get a little community area together where they can actually watch, your teacher online. That the government can implement that. I know the areas are more vulnerable and, not as well off as other areas, but at least, implement these things so the kids are safe.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're educated.
You can't underestimate the power of water, because there's nothing like, in terms of a flood, the water running out your tap. I mean, the force of the water, volume of water, 30 centimeters can float a car, which is incredible. We mentioned that it keeps happening as well. Now, as your work, how accurate can these predictions be?
So if we look at forecasting itself, so we are very thankful. We live in a time where computers are extremely strong. So it is actually becoming more and more accurate compared to a few centuries back. And at least with the observations that we have, the weather models, and we are basically adjusting ourselves and improving our forecast every single day. But at the end of the day, it's a forecast, not a promise, and we're not in control of the atmosphere. And there's always, a time that it's not going to be accurate and we're going to miss something. So the most important thing is always to stay informed and be on the lookout for weather warnings issued by the South African Weather Service. They do update it and understand their weather warnings, their matrix of what does it mean if it's a level 2 warning, what does it mean if it's a level 5 warning, so that you know the dangers associated with those types of warnings.
Absolutely, Annette. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. And baie interessant dit wat jy doen. Dis verseker, but of course, in the wake of the Durban floods, our hearts go out to everyone that's been affected. Stay safe out there.